This is the Mac Advantage, Professional Perspectives in Accounting. My name is Scott Showalter. I'm the director of the Master's Accounting Program. We'll be joined today by Christina Ho from the PCAOB. I'll get more in her description in just a minute. But the purpose of this session is really twofold. And one is to give you an opportunity to hear from leaders in the accounting profession that you may not have an opportunity to do, but also to be able to talk about current events. So our intent is to reach out, find leaders in the accounting profession that deal with current topics you may be reading about in the business press and be able to bring them to you, to hear from them some views. Now, you're going to be limited to the questions that I toss out, but hopefully we pick the right questions and be informative. And like I said earlier, we're very fortunate to have on our initial event, to have Christina Ho. Christina Ho is a board member of the PCAOB. For those who don't know those letters, that's the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. Christina became a board member in November of 2021. She's one of the two CPAs that resides on the board. Her background is very vast, which she's going to get to in a minute. Federal experience, state experience, public accounting experience. I had the pleasure of serving with Christina on the Federal Accounting Standards Advisory Board for several years. So we have a connection that goes back, and Christina's actually come to NC State and actually met with our students and spent time with them. So I want to thank her for that. So with that, Christina, I'm going to ask you your first question for today. And you do have a career that spans numerous roles, as I just mentioned. Please provide a summary of those experiences that led you to your role today, being with the PCAOB.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for having me here. I'm really happy to be able to chat about some of the things that's going on in the accounting space. And before I get started, I need to provide my standard disclaimer, which is that the views I express here are my own, and they do not necessarily represent the views of the PCAOB board, other board members, or staff. I started my career as an auditor. Then I transitioned to the technology field at a Fortune 500 company. I then diversified my career further as a financial policy and data executive at the U.S. Department of the Treasury. I was the interim CFO at a top 50 university with a $1.5 billion budget. Then I led a data science consultancy with deep expertise in AI. I believe that all of these roles have prepared me for my role with the PCAOB today because of my expertise in public accounting, financial reporting, technology, and public policy.
That's great. It's become very obvious why you were a candidate considered for the PCAOB, and particularly with what's going on in the accounting profession. A lot of those skill sets and experiences really much serve you well as a board member. So talking about that, our listeners may not have a full grasp about what does a PCAOB board member do anyway, okay? Do you just sit around the table all day and talk? So explain the various roles of a PCAOB board member.
Yeah, the PCAOB is a body corporate, operates as a nonprofit corporation, has a 5-member board, which is the PCAOB's governing body, and is subject to and has all the powers conferred upon a nonprofit corporation by the District of Columbia Nonprofit Corporation Act. This comes as a surprise to most people, as many people think we are a federal agency. The bylaws adopted by the PCAOB board years ago vest in the board chair day-to-day responsibility over the management and operations of the PCAOB. Other PCAOB matters, such as standard setting, the adoption of rules, registrations and inspection reports, formal investigations and enforcement actions. The PCAOB's annual budget and report require a vote of the board where a majority vote prevails. I spent a lot of time reviewing written materials and engaging with PCAOB staff on matters requiring a board vote. But I and my fellow board members are active in other ways too. For example, I served as the chair of the PCAOB's Technology Innovation Alliance Working Group, The PCAOB board tasked this working group with developing recommendations on how the PCAOB's existing or future programs might address the use of emerging technologies by auditors and financial statement preparers. In addition, one of my board colleagues served as the chair of the Global Audit Quality Working Group, convened by the International Forum of Independent Audit Regulators, or IFIAR. Another board colleague serves as the vice chair of IFIAR's Investor and Other Stakeholders Working Group. I also spend a fair amount of time speaking to investors, financial statement preparers, auditors, academics, students, and other stakeholders group. I believe my speaking engagements are important and mutually beneficial. I benefit by hearing what's top of mind to various PCAOB stakeholders, which helps inform my thinking on matters presented for a board vote. I also believe stakeholders benefit by being able to engage in an informal manner with one or more PCAOB board members where their views will be heard. In sum, PCAOB board members like me spend a lot of time reading materials prepared by staff on matters that require a board vote. That might sound a bit dreary, and at times it can be, but I take each board vote seriously, and I love my speaking engagements, especially with accounting students, because they have their career ahead of them. And if they choose to become public company auditors, they will be able to exercise immense power for the public good. I tell my 12-year-old daughter that auditing is more than just numbers. Auditing is akin to detective work where auditors discern trends and find truth in the data.
Great. You covered a lot of ground there. And I think I could safely say, I think the PCAOB board member has lots of broader experiences than probably any other standard setter that people think. And you did a good job of explaining that. So thanks for doing that. And I know on the personal bent, students really love when you come to class and engagement with you. When they realize you just like they are, you're human, right? And so sometimes that doesn't come off that way when they just see you on the videos and read your speeches. So that's great. Really appreciate you coming. The next question I have is really what keyed me to ask you to do this to begin with. And it was a couple of months ago in the Wall Street Journal, there was an article about how you'd voted against several of the PCAOB auditing standards that had been issued at that time. So this is what really got me interested in reaching out to you. Not that we don't talk about other things as well, but if you could just help explain your reasons for dissenting on those standards and your overall approach to looking at auditing standards.
Yes. To date, I dissented on 2 proposals and 1 final standard out of 20 votes I've casted since I was appointed, of which 16 were related to standard setting and rulemaking. I say that because I don't want people to think I'm just a naysayer. As far as I approach, I gave a speech a few months ago at a Chamber of Commerce virtual event about the 3 pillars of efficient regulation, which is the framework I use to assess policies. The first pillar is regulations should only be adopted when necessary. The Securities Act of 1933 ushered in a regulatory structure for the U.S. capital markets in the middle of the Great Depression. It provided a solid foundation for capital formation. Today, the U.S. capital markets is the largest, most liquid and innovative market in the world. Similarly, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002 was enacted to address significant audit failures. Looking back, it is fair to say that Congress' intent to restore public trust in auditors of public companies has made a real difference. Our capital markets continue to grow from a market cap of approximately 11 trillion in 2002 to approximately 55 trillion this year. However, the benefits of regulation also come with direct and indirect costs, which brings me to my second pillar. Regulations should be well designed and in proportion to the problem to be solved. Regulations carry with them potential disadvantages in the form of costs, which can be substantial if not proportionate to the problem to be solved. Poorly designed regulations can give rise to unreasonable compliance costs that impede companies' ability to invest their scarce capital in research and development or job creation. One way to distinguish between regulations that do good on the one hand and those that do harm on the other hand is through a careful evaluation of their benefits and costs. I casted the 3 dissenting votes on the proposal and the final standard that I believe were poorly designed and will in the long run harm investors by reducing audit quality and competition and increasing audit fees. I'll talk about each of them a little bit more specifically. First, the no-cloud proposal contains a breathtaking expansion of the auditor's responsibilities by transforming the role of the auditor from providing reasonable assurance to performing management functions. I expressed concern about creating additional barriers to entry for the smaller firms, which investors cannot afford given the lack of competition in the audit market for large multinational public companies already. Since the issuance of this proposal, we face strong opposition by the auditing profession, public companies, audit committees, investors, academics, and others. The PCAOB has received 189 comments to date. This proposal now has the 3rd highest number of comment letters in the history of PCAOB. Commenters overwhelmingly call for reproposal or withdrawal of the proposed standard. The second proposal I dissented on was the firm reporting. That proposal contains approximately 38 new reporting requirements or elements, and that its expansion of reporting requirements were poorly designed because they contain no clear and direct linkages to audit quality. I also was critical of the proposal's economic analysis because it quantifies neither the increased reporting and record-keeping requirements nor their estimated costs. The PCAOB's proposal carries with it opportunity costs that could end up hurting audit quality and the investors we're sworn to protect by forcing firms to spend more time reporting and less time auditing. The burdens could also cause smaller firms to exit the public company audit marketplace, resulting in even less competition and higher audit fees that are ultimately borne by investors and customers. I casted a dissenting vote on the adopting release of QC 1000 due to the myriad of concerns I have on the design-only requirements and the insufficient economic analysis in justifying the unnecessarily complex and burdensome requirements that are, in my opinion, harmful to audit quality. The QC 1000 was eventually approved by the SEC, and firms will now have to comply with it by the end of next year. The third pillar, which is the final pillar, is regulations should facilitate trust and innovation. As I mentioned earlier, I worked at Treasury for a number of years. My first role at Treasury was running the U.S. Department of the Treasury's auction operation, where it sells U.S. Treasury marketable securities to finance the federal government. To put this into context, in 2023, Treasury issued about $22 trillion in Treasury marketable securities, which are the most liquid and trusted financial instruments in the world. I believe that a key contributing factor to this high level of trust is the Treasury's enduring principles of predictability and transparency in the auction process. Every administration has preserved these principles because transparency and predictability facilitate trust. These same principles should apply to audit regulations. They should be balanced and reasonable, not subject to the swings of the political pendulum, because constant changes in regulations are costly, bad for business, and bad for our capital markets and investors. Lastly, I believe that regulations should enable innovation. With the advent of artificial intelligence, the opportunity to improve audit quality and reduce costs at the same time has never been greater. I believe that the PCAOB should be forward-looking in this area and should take steps proactively to promote innovation in audit quality.
Thank you, Christina. That's great to give that kind of inside look about how does a board member evaluate a standard before it goes out. So, and I think that's very insightful, and I think those in the practice very much appreciate your thoughtful process and deliberation, particularly having a framework in which you're following to be able to do that. You just mentioned AI there in the comment. Earlier, you mentioned in your background that you've had a lot of experience with technology. So our next question relates to, because you have leveraged technology a lot over your career, how do you see technology impacting the auditing profession going forward? And you mentioned that AI at the very end there, so.
Yeah, technology like AI is moving so fast that no one in this profession can afford to sit idle hoping it will pass like other hypes. AI provides us the opportunity to reimagine auditing. One recent trend that caused me to know that AI will eventually become the norm in the accounting and finance function is the proliferation of the use of the Microsoft Autopilot. I know that most auditors use Excel. And so Excel is a standard configuration in all the, laptop, desktop. And Microsoft Copilot is beginning to be a standard configuration. So I know that is, not going anywhere. It's also being explored in all facets of business, including research and development by audit firms. Audit firms are also partnering with various technology companies to explore, and in some instances, become a reseller of the Gen AI products. But of course, like all great opportunities, they come with risks and challenges. As I mentioned earlier, I believe that regulations should facilitate trust in innovation. It is important to assess the regulatory appetite for the firm's use of AI in conducting audits and understanding the associated implications to the standard setting process. Firms are challenged with not only creating their own AI tools for use in performing audits, but also tasked with assessing the reliability of financial data generated from their clients' use of AI. Therefore, it's important to proactively consider the various risks of AI, assessing the likelihood of potential impacts, and developing mitigation strategies. In essence, I think establishing some high-level guardrails on the effective and reliable use of AI in the preparation and audits of financial statements. So I think this is an area where there is significant opportunity for anyone in this profession, especially the up-and-coming accountants, auditors, and that this is going to be a very technology-enabled environment.
Great. It's always good to hear that the regulator is thinking about the impact of this technology on the audit and where it's going. And that brings me to our last question for you today. It's been great. I appreciate all your answers, frank answers today. So there may be individuals listening today that are thinking about a career in the accounting profession. So you've got a long, distinguished career. You've seen a lot of different things. As you look out, what advice would you give those listeners today thinking about a career in the accounting profession?
Well, I will say go for it, and you will not regret it. I published a paper in the Journal of Accountancy last month. In my paper, I tried to make a compelling case on why I thought CPAs were uniquely positioned to improve our world, which is increasingly chaotic and declining in trust. The core function of the accounting profession has always been about discerning and reporting the truth, which can transcend chaos and lead to solutions. A good accountant can methodically decipher a complex problem such that it can be understood and solved. Imagine a world with no accountants. Information would not be organized in a standardized and understandable fashion. Users would not be able to trust the information. And ultimately, this would lead to poor decision making, including ineffective use of resources, bad investments, and disastrous policy setting. The accounting profession is at a pivotal moment right now. Given the precarious trust environment, rapid technology advancement, and talent shortages, we can either maintain the status quo and risks become irrelevant, or we can be bold and lead the way in solving complex problems by using the most important skill all accountants are trained to have: understand the data to discern the truth. To realize this bold vision, we need every accounting practitioner to drive changes in this profession. If you want to make a difference in our chaotic world today by being a problem solver and truth teller, then join us.
Great, Christine. I think we need to bottle that and put that on every college campus. I think that'd be a great message out there. And so I want to thank you for participating in our initial session on Mac Advantage. You exceeded the bar that we established. We're going to have a very high bar in the future. So I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. And we look forward and invite you to join us in another Mac Adventure, Professional Perspectives on Accounting, coming up soon.